So we kind of dive into this with kind of a couple of important legal things. So the state likes for us to be just very clear in terms of, knowing all of our respective roles. And so understanding that in this meetup, I'm coming from this, from the position as a licensed realtor here in the state. That does make me an expert in that field, but it does not make me an expert when it comes to other like legal matters, things such as structural integrity of properties. I'm not a home inspector, I'm not a contractor, I am a realtor. So anything here, certainly, we're here to add value, but we would always say to just make sure if there's anything that you're curious about or you want a little bit more info on, always, again, just double check, trust but verify at the end of the day, right? I think it's always kind of the best practice in any field. Always just go to the experts. If you're looking for any of those experts, we're happy to connect with you. That's part of this whole network in general, is just to connect all of those pieces so that you have those resources at your disposal. With that said, let's kind of dive into it. When it comes to just lending out your own money, you can actually lend out your own money to others to invest, just like a bank. We'll kind of dive into a couple ways that can be done. Overall, that's what's called private or hard money. Something Steve here is kind of our expert panelist today to talk about. So that's when you're lending out. Hard money is kind of an old banker's term, right? Where it's just kind of lends against like a hard asset. In this case, though, you're just lending out your private money for a commercial purpose, likely to be just invested towards, in this case, say for real estate, for the purchase, renovation, rental of residential, commercial, multifamily real estate. There's an important distinction there. Just with that is the emphasis on commercial, as we're not lending to private owners or people that are going to be like owner occupants of a property, right? That would make us mortgage originators, which you're at that point kind of subject to just a number of different just accountability structures, right? And Dodd-Frank certainly is one. Any like RESPA, Dodd-Frank, fair housing, that's just an avenue that we don't go into when we're lending on our private money, right? These are just going to be straightforward just in terms of lending for those commercial purposes. So always making sure too, just to consult an attorney when it comes to drawing up the necessary paperwork. If you need a real estate attorney, certainly, feel free to reach out. I'm sure we'll be happy to connect. I'm sure Steve's probably got some people just in your own world, right?
Absolutely. I use attorneys for every transaction.
Yeah. I think it just kind of helps bulletproof, just protect everyone involved, right? Both you as the lender as well as just your borrowers in general.
And it helps some attorneys get rich.
Yeah, no, that's awesome.
Yeah, 3 more, Cory, if you want to. There's some
great. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, I love it. So Dawn Arion on here. Dawn's relatively new to real estate. She's got a few rentals, some acreage, looking to expand. Neil is here. It sounds like he needs to talk to you, Steve. Neil Foster, looking to do some more investing in the aspect of lending and also partnering with some people for real estate purchasing. And then we got Matt Javich, is an out-of-state multifamily investor looking for a local partner. So,
yeah.
You don't want to talk to Lanny. He's very plugged in, and then Jason's not here to scoop it up. So.
That's awesome.
We both have some pretty large portfolios. Good guys to know. So,
sure.
Back
Cool.
to you.
Yeah, awesome. Thanks so much for that. So some things just to kind of consider when you're getting into, when you're looking at being a private lender. Ideally, you've already participated in some real estate deals in the past. Maybe you've already helped done a few rehabs or flips or rental properties, right? Maybe wholesale a deal or two. You've at least got a good understanding of looking at a deal, looking at a property, I guess, and being able to really analyze, is it a deal? Do these numbers really make sense at the end of the day that I would be willing to loan, say, your own private money out on, right? There's a couple of vehicles, to do that. Certainly just your own cold hard cash. There's other accesses there. We dove into using self-directed IRAs in the past as a way that you can use that as your vehicle to lend out private money. And so that's a topic we've covered in the past. We'll likely kind of dive more into that here in the future, but that's also just an avenue for some people out there to use if they wanted to lend out of. They can always lend out of their self-directed IRA. Some things you need to know is just how to assess and determine your ARV, which is considered your after repair value. Being able to really look at that deal, what's it going to cost to really renovate this property. I did probably got a good relationship with a few contractors, and just through that experience, drawn from them, being able to kind of tap them on the shoulder and say, hey, what do the numbers really look like when it comes to turnover this property? Certainly that's what's going to be important when you're lending money out, right, Steve? It's just kind of pulling somebody's credit, and just making sure
There's a certain value to that, absolutely.
right. And I would say, like, would you say in private money, credit's not as important compared to traditional lending?
It really only has one importance. So you pull credit really more to make sure that the person you're potentially lending to is not behind on making current mortgage payments. That's the main concern.
Okay.
Any other portions in credit are much more forgivable in our world.
Right. That's cool. Okay, good to know.
So even from a credit score standpoint, generally, if somebody has at least a low 600, a 620, 630, they're likely to be able to get a loan in the hard money world.
Cool. Okay. That's good to know for sure. So credit not as important, still certainly has some value, but it's not totally
Not the number one.
not the number one.
So I'm curious, how do you determine ARVs?
Pulling comps, same way you guys do as agents, CRAs.
Check
So just using like Zillow and CRS, so you can kind of look at
Yeah, more
the
the tax
interior.
record, that way I can kind of get an accurate idea of what's being sold. And
Sure.
Comparables.
Sure.
So that's one way to do it. Also, if you've got an agent, especially a young guy like Zach's ambitious, you could find somebody out there that will happily work with you, pull some comps, come in and partner. That's a great way to learn it. If you haven't, Lane's doing it a long time, right? You're kind of doing the same areas, so you already have.
We're pretty good at it.
Exactly.
Yeah. That's cool. And then certainly, I guess, just lastly, just in terms of how you're going to restructure that payment, and that's certainly something that you as a private money lender owe to, but then certainly you would use an attorney to help you draw up that paperwork to just establish what are these terms,
Absolutely.
payment lines, all those things, right? So just how does the loan process work when it comes to real estate investment? We'll kind of do a couple of, we'll do a kind of a mock deal here in a minute, but I just want to talk about just they're going to sign what's considered like a commercial promissory note when it comes to that. So that's just going to cover our defining terms of the loan, interest, repayment, what happens if they default, what's kind of the guaranteed backing on that deal. On it, borrower's going to sign that commercial loan agreement, which is just stating that loan is going to be used as an investment property, not as their primary residence, because again, that would just make us loan originators or mortgage originators. That's not what we're holding, and they're just pledging at the end of the day that property is going to be used as collateral should they default, right? And that would give you the position just to foreclose or repossess.
The same way a bank would.
Same way a bank would, exactly. And so that's your part of this. They're going to sign in that deed of trust, giving the trustee, usually maybe an attorney that's going to be representing you as a private money lender, the right just to foreclose and repossess that property should your borrower default. But ideally, we're doing enough due diligence on the front end that we don't get to that point.
I can say thus far in my career doing this, I hope to never, I've never had to foreclose on anything.
That's cool. That's
But part of that is open. It's not just the underwriting, it's open communication. It's having a relationship with the people you lend to. So, I won't work with somebody via text. You laugh, but this is the world.
True, yeah.
I get on the phone, I get to know people, I gain comfort. I want them to gain comfort. You have to have transparency. And if you have communication, you can avoid these types of pitfalls, because you tell somebody, listen, you're getting in a bind, pick up the phone, give me a call, let's work through this. Now, I'm not going to say that's never occurred, but you work through it, you figure it out, and you work as a team.
Sure.
It's a partnership in a way.
Yeah. Having that trust piece, or that put it to the back.
Doesn't show anything this other one.
So there we go. Yep. Okay. So with that said, so real estate attorneys can usually draft up these documents for you should you need. Borrower is usually going to pay for the cost of that prep. what I've seen is usually it's been about like kind of $1,000 or so. I mean, I guess it's gonna depend on just their
I would,
hours, who it is.
I would say on an average fix and flip, you're looking at between 1,500 and 200.
Okay.
Give or take.
Pretty reasonable, pretty standard, I guess, attorney fee. That's just probably based on, I guess, billable hours that that attorney's just charging
Exactly.
for that time frame.
Yep, makes
Sense. So just at the end of the day, you're gonna have your safety net. So if you as the lender have a property similar just to, we talked a little bit about just a foreclosure process. Some states, I guess, in that regards are also a little bit more borrower friendly. So it might take a little bit more time to foreclose than say in Tennessee in general. I found it tends to be a little bit more landlord friendly.
Yeah, there are
lender friendly.
There are judicial states and non-judicial states.
Sure.
So non-judicial states, technically, if you have to foreclose, because somebody hasn't lived up to their end of the contract, you could pretty easily foreclose 60, 90, 120 days. Judicial states, even though people are not paying the way they're supposed to pay, for some reason they granted rights. States like New Jersey. New Jersey is the worst state. New Jersey can take you 3 years to get somebody out of their paying. That's about their average. I think it's 1,100 and something days.
Wow.
I don't lend my money in New Jersey. I do have ability to lend in New Jersey, but I don't put my cash in New Jersey. Sure, obviously.
Yeah. For sure. I'm trying because you came from Florida as well. Right?
Yes.
Where does Florida fall in?
So I would and do lend my own cash in Florida, and Florida happens to be a judicial state, but it's a judicial state that really leans more non-judicial.
Okay.
So it's still friendly. It's landlord friendly.
Yes.
It's lender friendly.
Sure. Because I just recall, the reason I asked you because I was in Florida during kind of the downturn, and I remember some neighbors across the street of mine, they had, a second mortgage out on that property. And I remember him saying like, I have a year or more, something like that. And they were still there. Eventually they had to leave, but I think they made it almost, it seemed to be close to 2 years.
I know somebody made 11 in Florida, but that was different. That was during that whole banking crisis. And that was based on the fact that banks were somehow guilty for lending people money that they shouldn't have. So that was a different one.
Sure.
They also, I was a mortgage broker during that time. They were truly overwhelmed. None of the structures, there was no structure in place to deal with any REOs, much less an unprecedented wave of them.
Right.
There was no one in it. None of the smart people worked in it. They were all on the origination side. There was no money in it. So staffing it was a problem. You were out working with the best of the best.
That's right.
Super, just kind of run and gun at that point, or just not enough infrastructure.
I mean, I negotiated short sales and foreclosures. I've done this during that, and it would take sometimes just the process from the bank. You're looking at like a 30-day turn time back and forth.
Each time. Each
Yes.
time there's something to say.
Yeah. Faxing, just fax things in. So we're still faxing things in 2010.
Yeah, that's true.
So slightly different time.
By the way, to anybody that might be participating in this that's under 30 years old, you might want to explain what fax is.
Sure. So fax is like scanning a document, but then you send it via phone lines.
You might want to explain what a phone is.
It's that jack in your wall that you don't know what it's there for. It's square. Just watch The Matrix.
Right, yeah. Exactly. Awesome. So we'll kind of go over a couple typical private lending terms overall. So usually around 8 to 12% interest, maybe a 1 to 3 point loan origination fee comes into play there. Some lenders have a particular criteria that they're going to want for kind of that loan to value ratio based on the after repair value based on the ARV. I've seen average seems to be about like 70 to 80% range. I guess it maybe just depends on the deal, the borrower, things like that, as far as what that range might look like. With that said, then there's also maybe a 6 or 12 month repayment schedule on that. Some might go a little bit longer, but I think that seems to be the most common.
I mean, I can tell you, I don't do anything less than a year. I don't like people to feel that pressure. I don't see any reason. And the reality is, if you're doing a fix and flip, it's not like anybody wants to be in that for a year.
Sure.
If they're getting past 6, 7 months, it's getting long in the tooth. They're looking to get out just as badly as you want your money back. So,
sure. Okay.
I don't think they need the push.
They don't need the extra kind of on the back just to keep it moving.
You said you've used hard money before, right, Landon?
Okay.
What terms are you typically seeing for repayment?
9 to 10%, 70% of the ARV.
Yep.
Yeah, so it's pretty spot on.
12 months or is it 6? Yeah.
So,
I think they used to do, there was more of that years ago where people do 3 and 6 month deals. I just think that's tough.
It's kind of hard.
that's fat, yeah, you gotta do it fast, right? I mean, that's like
There's
just
just no margin for error.
zero.
Yeah, it's not realistic.
No, it's not.
Something's gonna come around, so, at 3 months, you either have to have sold the property or, refinance.
Right, it's very not borrower friendly.
Yeah.
Sure. I don't think that's a good path for long-term relationships.
And then, I guess in there too is just anything else aside from some of those terms we've covered. Just maybe how some of that money is going to be released, right? If it's in draws, if it's being lent on a construction side, they're not going to lend all that out.
Well, I think that's a piece that people have a real lack of understanding, which are what you would call the drawdown on a rehab budget. And I think that's, for somebody like you, who, you have real private guys that you borrow from, because we've discussed that before. But in general, when you're dealing with hard money, what I consider the street, where you don't have somebody you know personally who's lending you money, the drawdown is kind of a different game, because like you were saying, it's not released all at once. You really shouldn't be paying interest on all of it. You should be paying interest as it's released. And you also have to have enough cash on hand of your own to front some of that rehab while you're waiting for release.
Sure.
And I don't think a lot of investors, well, I know a lot of investors, not because I speak to so many on a daily basis, that I have to explain. You have to have that money available to do the work, and they're just unaware.
Sure.
They're unaware of down payments. I think that's a big piece to cover also.
Yeah, that's awesome.
I think we're gonna break into some specific numbers.
Yes.
And I think that'd be let's talk about what that looks like. What's a confessed judgment? Does anyone know that term?
That's a new one for us.
Sorry.
Yeah. That's a new one. Okay.
Somebody's gonna
Well,
Google
if
it.
anybody knows, yeah, anybody else here on the internet, can Google that for sure. Yeah, so we'll kind of dive into, we're going to go through just a structure of a deal in general. So in this case, we've got a property with an example is going to be an after repair value or an ARV of $300,000. We got a purchase price of this property at $175,000. Our timeline is going to be about 6 months from purchase to resale. So moving pretty quickly, I'd say. Rehab estimate, construction pullback $50,000 is given the borrower in draws as our construction progresses. So that leaves, if we take that 70% max loan against our ARV, we'll lay a max loan of $210,000 on this deal. Our loan cost, just to start this, is going to be at 12% interest. So it breaks down to $2,100 a month. 2 points funding fee, prepaid, 2 months of interest, and 2 points is going to be $8,400. Loan funded at closing, $151,600. So if we kind of take our total max loan, subtract our construction costs, plus our two months of prepaids, it's going to leave us with a $175,000 purchase. Minus that $151,000 loan is going to mean that our borrower is going to need to bring $28,000 cash to close. There's an important distinction there. I think you were talking about, it's just the total cash needed to get to the full end of it. There's still going to be some carrying costs for this deal overall. So for our total cash needed example on this deal, we got $175,000 plus our $50K rehab, plus your $8,400 in prepaids, another $8,400 for the interest, $4,000 in closing costs equals a total of $245,800 minus, right, our total max loan of $210,000. Leaves us meaning that our borrower in this case is going to need to have $35,800 cash on hand in order to complete this full transaction. I guess my question for you, Steve, on there is, are you looking for your borrower to have that like exact amount, or how much cushion would you like to see our ideal borrower have in that? Like not just 35, 40, 45,000, more than better, I suppose.
No, so I'm not as sensitive to ARV.
Mhm.
I like to, I usually go over the deals. I shouldn't even say usually. I go over the deals with whoever's borrowing. And generally speaking, if they're putting down 20% of of the cost of purchase, I'm protected, right? So as a lender, you have to do it this way. I'm in this for two purposes. One is, like I said at the beginning, I enjoy the whole thing. I enjoy the idea that somebody is fulfilling their dreams and I get to be part of it, but I'm there to make a living also. My upside is only the interest rate that I can earn. And my goal is to earn that while protecting my downside. Well, if you're an investor, you're not going to be buying, or you shouldn't be buying properties at full face value, where you're not investing. You can't buy within 20 grand of ARV, you have to be buying at discount. So you're already buying at discount. If you're putting down 20% of purchase price, I'm pretty safe at that point. So I don't get as caught up in the ARV side of it, because I think ARV is a little bit, it's a moving target. It's hard to know, especially in this market, what a house is worth yesterday can be very different than what it's worth tomorrow, and then back and forth. So I concern myself a little bit more with the purchase price.
Okay.
I would say.
Yeah, we say it before, right? You make your money on the buy side.
Absolutely.
Anyway, right? And any, I think, rehab or renovation or hold as a rental, I mean, your money's really made on what you buy it initially for, because certainly as you get into a deal, there's so many variables, right? Between extra costs, all of a sudden you could uncover a hidden problem that now we need to replumb this house, or the market could just shift, ideally for the better, but it is a market, so it's going to change, cyclical overall.
Those terms, the terms that you see, are those accurate in terms of points or interest, or those way off?
No, I mean, I always tell people, I think depending on who you deal with, I always like to start a conversation with a new prospect. I'll always say to them, I don't want to discuss what I do, I want to discuss the industry first. I always say in the industry, you're going to pay somewhere between 2 and 5 points, generally speaking, and you're going to pay somewhere between 9 and 15% interest, depending on who you're dealing with. And those are really factual numbers. I tend to stay in a range, I'm usually 3 points and about 10%. So I'm not the lowest, but I don't sit so high where somebody's going to be uncomfortable and not want to come back and work. So if they've enjoyed the experience, I'm in a comfortable enough spot. Listen, comfortable, it's not a bank where they're getting it for 4%, but given the world that we're in and we're in the vertical we work in, it's comfortable enough where they can work with me if they enjoy working with me. They don't have to go look and say, well, he was great, but I'm not paying 15%.
What do you see? What are you seeing roughly is out there?
As far as
Fees and rates, is it?
around 3% for hard money. 9 to 12% is coming up in the season. I think those numbers dropped in the last 2 years, or year and a half. They were, you're seeing a lot more 13, 14%.
Yeah, that was when I first kind of got going. I was seeing that some of the bigger lending houses were in that like 14% range, and it's just
now they're slowly starting to come down.
It changes a little on geography too. Like I lend in California also. California is actually, they're accustomed to much lower rates, like much lower rates. Really? But I think it has to do with the property price too, although New York is not accustomed to lower rates and their property prices are, comparable in that respect. But I think there's more action in California.
do you think that's based on just population? I mean, is that kind of same way?
So much of New York is just city and apartments, and so much of California, you have houses and different opportunities for people to do business. But, around the country, an average fix and flip's 150 to 200 grand.
Yeah.
I don't think you can't go to Home Depot and buy wood in California for the job for 150 to 200 grand. Not everything there starts in the 3, 4, 500.
Yeah.
So I think it's more a function of just overall cost of
Cost of doing business.
I did get clarification as to what a
Great,
confessed judgment is. A confessed judgment is when a borrower agrees to some terms that would allow a judgment to be entered into them. So if you've ever signed like a mediation clause or arbitration clause where you both agree to go to arbitration rather than suing each other, it's going to be the same thing, where instead of a contested judgment, you're agreeing ahead of time that if I don't fulfill the terms of this contract, I can't fight that judgment.
I wonder if the deed in lieu would fall into that.
I don't know.
There are states where people do what's called a deed in lieu, where essentially you give up your rights to a foreclosure hearing and you just give over your property.
It's actually not a bad way to really go about it. Just if you want to keep everything open right off the bat, And I would say, I would probably just go and do a deal with somebody just trying to agree to that. Just right off. Yeah, it's just we pre-agreed that if this goes sideways, this is what's done. We're gonna hope and trust and everybody's gonna work together to not have it go that way, but things happen. So that one would be a pretty advisable way to go, I would think, honestly, if you just agree to it ahead of time. So I guess, long story short, under this scenario, our borrower's loan costs from them is going to be $16,800 on the sale of that property. The profit's going to be about $40K after the cost of sales and payback. So you're certainly greatly increasing their return versus just say going 50-50 in a deal with somebody. If you bought the property, a little bit of money, or they're bringing the rest of it, and you're splitting profits on the back end. Certainly a pretty good deal for a borrower, and I guess for the lender as well, because you're taking an annualized rate of about 16% on that. And so at that rate, your net worth is going to look to nearly double about every 4 years, as long as you can keep that train rolling.
As long as you can keep it, find the projects to consistently invest in, right?
Right.
Which is, you guys know, is not the easiest thing for people to do.
Right. And that's just, is that where you start having to look in just different areas of the country and just where can I keep these returns?
You know, I think you're talking to the right guy over there. You know, there's more knowledge there on how to find deals than in this, for sure. I stay in my lane. I know how to fund them and I know how to evaluate them. But there are definitely, I run across a lot of really smart people that figure out ways to find them. I see a lot of people kind of reaching their way out of the major cities, like trying to buy property in Knoxville right now. Good luck. Sure. You know, I met a guy, he plays around in Harriman, and he's got a unique setup there. I took a ride up there. It's cool. It's, you know, if you could find your niche, there's business to be done. To compete here in Knoxville, I don't know how you would do it.
It's tough. There's certainly opportunities there, but I can understand, yeah, why people are starting to stretch more up to these.
Well, I think to work in Knoxville, I think you have to be, if you really want to do fix and flip type stuff, you have to be more able to do heavy work. Yeah. You're not doing carpet and paint.
So you're not in that.
Oh, yeah. Most of the stuff I buy in Knoxville, yeah, it needs a lot of rehab. So you have to be pretty knowledgeable in construction because
Yes.
Most people don't want to touch it if it needs a lot of work.
And
those
that's
are
your
the only
advantage.
deals that, I mean, not the only deals, but that's the majority of the deals you can find.
Sure. And I mean, it's just, at the end of the day, it's just a lot of cash that we've hanging out there. I've been in a few just in the last week or so that, you know, what they're asking for on a property is not crazy. I mean, in terms of that respect, but the properties need $100,000 worth of work, let's say. And the upside might still be $100,000 more than that, but you're still leaving, I mean, in this one example, I know the property, probably get it for about 130 grand, but it needs a solid 100,000 into it. ARV on that's right 325 range. So it's a good margin,
deal.
but there's also just, that's a lot of
There's a lot of
money.
overtime.
Yeah, it's a long time.
And a
It's gonna be
certain
long
skill
rehab.
set, and there's a real skill set to that.
Yeah, and that's just, I think, might be what deters some people from those kind of deals, is just because it's just such a heavy.
As an investor flipping a property, at my skill set, it would keep me out of it.
Right.
I can't manage a project.
And so I guess when you're looking at things that you're considering to lend out, certainly, I guess, just you as a private money lender, you're looking even at, are you asking maybe your borrower, if they're not a contractor, who their contractor is, and just trying to look for that evidence of success? Ideally, you know, a track record of, hey, they flipped these properties, this is some deals we've done in the past.
So I do different things than other people do, because for me, I'm heavily concerned with the success of the borrower. More so than I need to be for the business purpose. It's just who I am. I just care that the person's going to have success and they're going to be able to do this over and over and they're going to fulfill their dream. That's why I ask those questions. Again, from a safety standpoint, if you just go back to the numbers, they're putting down 20%, they're buying at a discount. I'm lending them 80%. I control how the funds are released for their rehab. I'm not in real danger if they don't know how to do it. Sure. But yes, I always ask those questions.
Just to make sure that there's somebody embedded there. So I mean, we've looked at just kind of some considerations in there, at least a minimal amount of equity in there, or it's kind of just skin in the deal. So just never lending out 100%. I do see that. I mean, from time to time, there are lenders I see that say they'll front 100% of your purchase or 100% of your purchase and your rehab costs.
Do I get to please comment on that?
Yes, sure.
So my number one hunting ground is Facebook. I do a lot of business, and more recently, really a lot of business through social media and Facebook especially. And I see those ads all the time. And I dig through those ads and I get to the people who are putting those ads out. And I cannot, and I could teach people how to look through these ads. And you'll see an American looking family and you start going through the about me kind of thing. And you'll find out that they visited Nigeria 3 months ago. The only Americans that go to Nigeria are Brad Pitt and Angelina Jolie to bring them children. So these people are not for real. There is no hard money lender out there advertising. It's the truth.
Yeah.
There's no hard money lender out there advertising 100% that is for real. Again, you might have an uncle, a cousin, a friend, somebody, a neighbor that just has some money in an IRA that trusts you. If you're a really experienced guy, they might do it. The only way you're getting 100% financing from anybody real is in a 50-50 partnership. I'll lend you, I might lend you 100% of the money if you had a skill. Like somebody like Lanny, he said, look, Steve, I found a house, I'm a little short on dough. You want to do a deal with me? We'll go 50-50, you put up the money. Yeah, because I know he knows how to do the work. I know I'm safe. And he just needed money to get a deal. But with a newbie, there's no shot on earth, I promise you. And I'm going to tell you what, you didn't ask.
Yeah, but I would love to be.
Because I'm going to ask you to reverse seats.
Sure.
Would you lend me the money if I called you? What are you doing for me?
Crazy.
Yeah. You found a property. Awesome. Here's 100% of the money. Go get them, champ. That's not how business works, right? And that's just the reality. So that's a come on. And what happens is they get people to do, what they get them to do is they issue a term sheet, and the term sheet looks great. And then they give them some story. Great, we're going to lock in this rate. So there's a lock-in fee of $750 or $1,500, and they get these people to send them $750 or $1,500, and that is the last they hear or see from them, unless they get them 2 or 3 more times before it's the last they hear from them. I've saved 2 deals about 3 days prior to closing because people have already been just from 100% financing.
Yeah. So there's always got to be some.
It sounds too good to be true.
It is
too good to be true.
Yeah, it is, right, most definitely. Wild.
We used to get people calling us on foreclosures, lease pendants, to be on Zillow, because the HOA would, especially in Florida's called HOAs, like in these nicer communities where the owner's like battling with the HOA, he don't care. So they're like filing foreclosures. People are calling me, can I get this 350, 400K house for $4,000? And I was like, no. Let me explain what that is. Like that's their HOA. So
Relax, right?
They're not going to lose it. They're just at war with the HOA.
So we'll talk a little bit about just kind of some things that your borrower should be bringing to you other than this deal, right? Certainly just a fully ratified, valid purchase contract, ideally. Not on the back of like some napkin, right? There's some actual contract language in there. Just a full estimate for those rehab costs, and I think that's what I talked about just a minute ago. Of wanting to make sure that if they're not doing the work themselves as a general contractor, that how are they going to complete it? So who is that contractor? And I guess if it's me, I probably want to see that evidence of success. And you see that contractor's work. What are some examples of their sales? Ideally documented on the MLS, just that you can actually see.
And we'll even ask, and if it's somebody who's not a first timer, I ask anyway, but if they're not a first timer, I ask for HUD statements from prior closed deals.
Sure.
At least 2 or 3.
Just to show that. And then I guess lastly, just a big important piece on there is just going to be insurance for the whole thing, just making sure that that's at least set up, ready to go right at settlement. That way, God forbid anything happen to, the property's at least insured. Exit is still covered and backs up.
Correct.
With that, I think that was where I was going. I wanted to kind of dive in real quick, Steve, just if there's anything, maybe I didn't cover, if there's anything special other than that you really are looking for when you're analyzing a deal or somebody comes to you with it.
I mean, I really feel like we covered quite a bit, you know, definitely enough for, you know, a more surface type conversation. You know, if anybody has questions, if anybody wants anything answered, I'm happy to answer them. But,
Yeah, we can see, I mean, if there's anybody here online that, you know, if you got questions for us, questions for Steve, I mean, now's a great opportunity to just throw it in the chat and be happy to try to get them answered, yeah.
Yeah, I'll jump on camera. Anybody got any questions?
Do you structure all of your deals the same way, or do you have flexibility in the structure?
So that's a great question. So I do a lot of institutional style lending. I started out more private and I do more institutional. I do private lending from time to time. I did an RV park here right outside Bristol Raceway. That's a very different structure. I did a marina here, Melton Home Marina. That was totally a different kind of situation. But generally, when I'm doing residential, it's pretty much the same structure every time. I would say I stay consistent with that.
Anybody online?
Whitney just wants Steve's contact information, because I think she jumped on after I dropped it in the chat, so I'm gonna reshare that for you, Whitney.
Cool. Is that Whitney Hawkins?
It is Whitney.
It's up with me. That's cool. We just talked earlier today. That's cool. Cool. I mean, thanks so much.
Thank you.
Certainly for that. I mean,
Anybody got any questions, Will or Zach? What do you, is it people are doing this because they're credit challenged, or people are doing this because of the restrictions of dealing with traditional bank don't work?
The credit challenge wouldn't save them so much because, you know, the credit requirement for going to a bank isn't probably all that much different. I would think if you're in the mid sixes, you might be able to get into a bank. It's more the entrepreneurial spirit of this country and the fact that the bank has no respect for it. So if you're a W-2 employee, this is my favorite conversation. Thanks for asking, not getting rid of you now. So if you're a W-2 employee, in the last 2 years, you've managed to make $42,000 and you don't have a nickel to your name, you could go into a bank and they'll loan you money because you could show a W-2. Now, they loan you that money and you lose your job the next day, that property's coming right back. And they did it FHA at 3.5% down. Now, if you're an entrepreneurial person and you make your money a little bit more uniquely and you have some write-offs and you're not showing as much income, but it's obvious that you have money, even if you show them in a bank account that you have $500,000, they don't want to lend you money. So it's more that it's the DTI, the debt to income, that brings people my way, because I don't care about the debt to income. And I care that the asset can support whatever the loan is. And even on the rental side, so I do 30-year stuff as well, only about 1% or so higher than the banks. But anyway, I mean, that's
Really? That's fascinating.
yeah. Well, it's a little bit newer for me. I picked that up in the last probably 3 to 6 months.
Okay.
As I said, I geared more institutionally.
Yeah.
So I have clients that have long-term rentals that want to start pulling equity out. So the difference with me is in a bank, they could probably get 75% out and they're likely to go 15 or 20 years. I could take them 30 years at probably closer to 70% out. And maybe where they were getting 3.8 to 4.2 at a bank, I might be able to get them 4.8 to 5.5. But they're not jumping through the same hoops.
Sure.
It's again property performance and a little bit of credit.
And for you, is that some diversification? You've got some short-term income and some long-term
Well,
income?
No,
Okay.
there's no lender lending their own money that's going to keep their money in a 30-year deal at 4.5%. That's stuff that I sell back off.
Okay.
So just the way your bank resells your mortgage, I have a secondary market to resell those. I
Packaging them and wholesaling.
Absolutely.
Gotcha.
Absolutely.
We can have a conversation
Yeah,
about the
I knew
secondary mortgage
that was
market.
going to go too deep.
No, yeah. I was a mortgage broker. Matt wants to talk about that secondary market. He's curious about it. So for anyone that's not kind of privy, a secondary market is a mortgage originator. We can say it better than me, but I'm on a roll.
We can get it simple. Unless you have a mortgage on your house, you did it with Bank of America, and all of a sudden 3 weeks later you find out that Sunshine State is your new mortgage service company. They bought the mortgage. It's that simple. So I have somebody, I fund the deal, and then if I funded it according to proper underwriting guidelines, which I have to stick to, especially on those, because I don't want to own that for 30 years for sure. They'll buy that from me in 72 hours or so, and then it refreshes my money to do more deals and to get involved in more situations.
Sure.
It makes no difference to the borrower.
Yeah, you know, my mom's a secondary underwriter.
Okay.
Doing it 20 years, so I see all this, that when big banks are selling these packages to each other, just going back to the pay histories, but it's the same thing. They're gonna underwrite that deal. Just check your underwriting, make sure it's right.
This is just probably more private hedge fund money involved
Cool.
rather than
Institutions, it's the same process, just on a different scale.
same way.
To answer your question, Matt, let me know. I got some great feedback. So Chris said it was a great presentation, and Neil wanted to thank you both for taking the time out to share your experience and help us move in the right direction.
Yeah.
Very much appreciated.
Yeah.
And that's it. Yeah, that answers this question. Cool.
Cool. No, that's awesome for sure. And so, thanks so much, everybody. Certainly, make sure, certainly feel free to leave us a review there on our meetup.com page or on Facebook. RSVP for next month's meetup here, kind of same bat time, same back channel.
What are we talking about, Cory?
Should we talk about buying apartment complexes?
Yes, how to
No,
buy
how to
apartments.
buy an apartment complex.
What everybody
So
wants, right?
that big multi-fan, everybody's after it right now for sure. So we're going to be doing a good deep dive next month just into how to buy apartment complexes, kind of the ins and outs of that. I guess we're going to go ahead and we're just going to hang out, kind of connect with people in the room.
Yes.
But go out there, find some deals, join us next month, bring some deals to the table. There's your boy Steve. He's got your cash for you.
Check. And check our emails. There is an email list if you want to get put on this for off-market properties. We run across, Cory probably runs across at least 4 or 5 a month.
Yeah, oh yeah.
Just to
Regular.
digging. We'll share those out with you. Just add your information if you want to get those, if you're interested in picking up some residential off-market properties.
Yeah, we got a good little flip coming up here in North Knoxville. I'm going to be sending out to everybody here shortly. So good stuff for sure.
All right.
Thanks so much. Thanks.
My pleasure.
Appreciate that.